You are watching NCN.
Good afternoon. My name is Paula Thompson, and I am here today representing Child Diana. We are due for another session focused on Autism Awareness Month, and we have with us today three panelists who have been working in the area of special needs education, and these are Carrie Ann Richards, Shelly Wilson, and Amanda Mentor. Ladies, would you mind giving brief introductions on yourself and or what it is that you do? Maybe we can start first with you, Carrie Ann, then Shelly, and then Amanda.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carrie Richards, and I'm a speech and language therapist slash audiologist attached to the Disability and Rehab Services Ministry of Health.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shelly Wilson. I'm a commissioner on the National Commission of Disability, also a caregiver, and a member of the Rumville Parent Support Group for Children with Disability.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amanda Mentor Stevens, and I'm attached to the Diamond Special Needs Program.
Ladies, for sharing about yourself and what you do. So I think we can just get right into the conversation stage. I'm really looking forward to it because the last one we had, which was sort of an introductory session, was very, very informative. And I certainly learned a lot, and I know whoever was viewing would have been able to learn a lot more about autism, which is a very under-discussed topic with Guyana in general. A lot of persons do not necessarily understand certain disabilities. But it is great that we have an opportunity now to speak with you all and really highlight some of the challenges and the ways in which we can support autistic children. So maybe I can start first with you, Karianne. And I was curious about what are some of the first language signs concerning an autistic diagnosis?
Sorry about that. All right, so some of the first language signs concerning an autistic diagnosis is we got to remember that early signs of autism usually appears in the first 1 to 2 years of age. And social and communication development is an important area to watch for early signs of autism. Um, Social and communication development involve things like learning to smile, make eye contact, and use gestures. So let's break it down a little bit. When we think about social communication and interaction, so if the child does not consistently make eye contact to get someone attention, like for example, they might not always look at you and then at a snack that you want to show them to tell, or they would come to you or you want them to have this snack, they won't look directly at you or point to say, well, mommy, I want this, or teacher, I would like to have that paper, right? They would really point to stuff, hold up objects to show you things. So, like I said, if they want like a cup or they want a crayon, they wouldn't go to the teacher or they won't go and pick it up so that you can look at them to give that attention to say, hey, this is what I want. Um, they won't respond to their names. That's one of the most important one. They would not respond to their names at all, right? They won't use gestures on their own. So, for example, like wave goodbye, you would say, bye, Kevin, and Kevin won't respond to you, right? Or clap his hand if you want him to clap at something. They won't smile at you consistently or anyone who's familiar with them. They would rarely copy someone's action. So, like if you say jump and you show them to jump, they may not do that. Um, they won't make a song. You know, some children, the first set of words they learn or the first set of words they say are babbling and cooing. Some children on the spectrum do not do that. While some may they would go through their milestones as per normal, when they reach a certain age, they would stop doing certain things. So that's one of the early signs. They would not understand one step commands. Like, for example, you say, give me the block or show me the bottle. They won't be able to do so. Those are just some of the early language signs.
Thanks so much for sharing that. Just a quick follow up on that question. So, one of the points that really came across in the discussions, the last one we had, and also you're kind of reiterating some of the points, is that when it comes to autistic children, they might have a lot of challenges when it comes to speaking. Is lack of speech in children always necessarily a sign of autism?
Well, not necessarily, because they have some children who are speech delayed or language delayed, and it can pose like, they're on the spectrum. But the difference is that a child with autism does not interact with you, while a child who may have a language or speech delay may try to see how best they can communicate with you.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot for clarifying that for us. I certainly was under the perception that persons who might have delayed speech patterns might definitely be on the spectrum of autism. So it's good to have a bit more information on what that is and what it looks like. So this question, it's a open question. So if you have any thoughts you'd like to share on it, please feel free to do so. And just to keep the conversation going, when someone else finished speaking, if you have something to say, you can just go right ahead. So how do you address stigma towards disability in the work that you do? Um, well, this I really would like to hear your perspective from all of this.
All right, I'll go first. When it comes to stigma, the thing is that for someone who is on the spectrum, we cannot, like stigmatize them, right? No stigma should be attached to no form of disability in general. So when it comes to, like I said, when it comes to stigma, we try to let parents or persons around these children understand what the condition entails, so they would know, okay, there are certain things that may trigger an outburst for them, how they can go about supporting the family, how they can go about helping the family, how they can go about helping the child. So when it comes to stigma, like I would tell persons, if you read and you understand what's happening, then you won't try to state, well, this child is bad behaved, or this child is not listening to the mom, they're throwing a lot of tantrums, something is happening with the child. So we need not to judge.
If I might just add, Latoya, to what my colleague just mentioned about the whole aspect of stigmatization. When we look back, let's say 2000, 2002, we find a lot of children came into this school environment, and the parents somehow it was a bit off for them, because why? The children were going through the process gradually of learning and so on. Then all of a sudden, they stopped looking at the parent or looking at caregivers, and everybody was in awe. But what changed from 2000 to now is the fact that we were there bombarding the public, informing the public of the changes. This is a different disability. It's called autism, and we keep sensitizing. So basically persons were sensitized through the community work, through television, through various media. So it was a long process, but with continuous effort, we've been able to make strides throughout the years. I do believe that the home environment is the first block when it comes to communicating. So having parents that are fully supporting, understand what the disability is like, would help the process even better for the child. So it's important that, as caregivers, that we keep informing not only parents but also the public as to what disability is like.
And may I add to this? May I add to this? In sensitizing and with the stigma toward disabilities, we at the NCD, National Commission, we did a lot of sensitization with ministries and workplaces and also sharing of flyers. You may notice a lot of flyers post up with words to use and words not to use. So people out there would be aware of what to say when you see these children with disabilities. Also, you try to include them in the normal school system. Training sessions are also there for them so they can be into the society at a reasonable time. Employment where it is possible. We're trying to get that done with them because we do skill training. And from the skill training, they're being offered jobs. So the stigma, we really working with them so we can get the stigma away. But the most important part with stigma, it begins at home, as my colleague George said, the family, and then it goes out to the world. Because what you say is put people first, not disabled people, but people with disability. So that can give the children some motivation. Thank you.
Yes, certainly. Thanks so much for adding to that question. It definitely is very important to ensure that we prioritize persons who have disabilities and look at the ways within which we can really support them and their development. And so I know that a lot of the work that you all do really seeks to promote public education and challenge a lot of the stigmas that exist, particularly against special needs. So I'm curious as to when it comes to autism in particular, what are some of the myths surrounding autism that might be harmful, not only to persons but suffering from autism, but generally?
Uh, the question was directed. Oh, it's something that you can catch. that's the that's the craziest word over the years. Because being in an environment, we have both schools. We have the primary school, which you have children from various age groups. You have them from ages 5 going up until in their teens, and they have this system whereby they don't want to play with the children because they feel that whatever they would have, whatever they look at it as a disease, it's going to catch on to also me. So what they do, they create a barrier, right? So when they create the barrier now, they're really setting themselves up for not knowing these wonderful children. They're so loving and kind and right, and given that they put up a block like that, it's so harmful to not only the child but also more to them, right? So there are a number of others, but I'll show my other colleagues, they will be able to share a bit on that too.
Thank you. Would you ladies like to go ahead and yes?
Yeah, there, aside from what Miss Amanda would have said, one of them is autism is a mental health disorder when it's actually a neurological condition. Like we don't know how it's caused. Um, there are many other conditions that attach themselves to autism, but one of the main thing is that they see when they see someone on the road what we would say the mad people, they say that, they have a mental disorder. They may be autistic, but autism is actually a neurological condition. Um, Another one is that vaccines cause autism, but there is no evidence that shows that childhood vaccines can cause autism. Um, Another big one is poor parenting. They say that the parents are the one who caused this child to be like this, but like in the 1950s, they had an assumption that maybe emotionally distant parents can have a child who's on the spectrum, but that cause is not determined, like there's no evidence to show that, this is true. Um, Another one is autism can be cured. Like I said before, there is no cure. Scientists hasn't came up with anything that can cure autism.
However, however, given the fact that we are poor, you can basically teach the child how to deal with the various aspects or the various syndrome that comes with being autism, right? Teaching them through routines and all of that. So it's not a life, what should I say? It's not a life brand I would like to say.
And also, we got to take into consideration that autism has multiple levels. So there's from mild to moderate to severe. So those who are on the spectrum, I know they have mild autism, as we would say. They can function in a normal setting, they can go to school, they can work in a normal environment. Those with moderate, they can do all of the above, but they may have some amount of traits still or some amount of characteristics that overcome or overflow the ones that, like for the mild ones. And for severe, those are the children who throw terrible tantrums, like have no speech. They can't really express themselves properly. Those are severe cases. But at the end of the day, an autistic child actually grows into an adult because back in the days, I am sure we have adults today that show some amount of characteristics of being on the spectrum. But remember, we didn't have speech therapy and we didn't have all these different special need strategies, but these children turned into adults and working in everyday life. They made children. So now that, new medicine are coming out, then we can clearly state that, maybe this person was on the spectrum, because I can attest that I have a parent who has a child who is on the spectrum that comes to clinic, and he is an autistic adult.
Basically,
Oh,
one of the
really good.
when I add to what you were saying, right? Um, Given the fact that with autism it comes with, what should I say, a kind of more awareness when it comes to their senses. You more, you know, when it comes to smell, right? Things might be a bit off. You feel uncomfortable. I know of cases whereby the bare smell of plum would trigger, right, tantrum, and the parent don't know what is causing the child to be like this, right? So you have to be observant. What is it that triggers the child? Maybe the sound of a fan, right? You can be able to teach that child how to really cope with the song. That, because remember, it's an overwhelming experience for him or her, right? When you go into an environment that doesn't really cater for, taking off the song, with maybe this is a bit too high to tone it down a bit, right? But when you go into an environment, you could be able to teach that child how to really cope with his or her, what should I say, shortcomings. You can be able to do so much more for that child. Apart from that, just to add to what you were saying regarding to the adults. Um, let's say about 20 years ago, persons that had some bit of, they know that there's something physically wrong or mentally wrong, because I cannot, when I go into crowd, I feel so overwhelmed to the point that I have to separate myself. These persons have this responsibility, but because they were not able to cope with their shortcomings, they want to withdraw. And people see them as, and they would mock them sometimes, and that was really, really hard. Now, picture this, if they were in an environment that they were able to be taught how to deal with it, they were able taught to function in such an effective way that they would be able to give back to the community. I know there's so many people out there that will be able to basically do so much more because they were able to reach to their highest potential because of support.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts on some of the myths and challenges that persons living with autism tend to experience and the ways within which we provided support. I know that you mentioned that when it comes to autism, often it's about managing the illness rather than curing it. So I was curious about, for those who might be interested in learning more about how to manage autism symptoms, what are some of the things that they can do? If you can expand a bit on that answer.
Miss Amanda, you like to go ahead?
Oh my gosh. It, for me personally as a class teacher, it varies, right? Each of us, we have our bit of personality. To reach the person, you have to be at their level, the child. You reach at their level, find out what are they likes, if they like cars. Basically, I know they have their nest. The autistic child have the nest. Their obsession, as or some persons would call it. If it's with car, you will always see them twirling a car, or maybe they would have this fixation with maybe with straws. You try to attach yourself in it, sharing that you care about what they care about, and you'll be able to reach them at a level, oh gosh, for life. You will be, kind of engrossed with their life. However, when it comes to dealing with them, you cannot separate your thoughts and separate your mind in such a way that you can be able to baffle them. One of the things you do, you set up a routine. Some of them would like the whole idea of having pictures. Pictures show them signs, give them routine, give them a bit of structure. If it's a timetable you're using, you use the pictures as well. And that could be able to help them to go through things at a better pace, right? If I might just say, maybe you could fill me in a bit, Miss Carrie, on your input on it, because as a class teacher, I see things probably differently than how you will see it being in hospital.
Well, in our clinic, what we do is that when the child comes into us, we observe them 100, right? Because our room is very small and it has a turmeric color paint on all the walls. So that may be very overwhelming for the child. So what we would have to do is take them into another room and then cooperate them back into where we want them to be. Um, when it comes to managing their behavior, like we try to, this is every child is different, but we try to have a structure every time they come to clinic. So they know as soon as they come to the door, they take their shoes off, and we have a white chair that we would call the big boy chair or the big girl chair, and we have them sit in it. Some children took about 1 month to get the concept of come into the door, take off your shoes, and sit in the big boy or big girl chair. Um, Another thing that we do is encourage the parents to do exactly what we do at home, right? So if we have a table and chair setting in the clinic, we expect that to happen at home as well. And you will see a vast difference with those children. Another thing that we do is that we encourage the parents to send them to school because we realize now that there's a lot of children who may be on the spectrum or suspected because we can diagnose autism here. Autism is being diagnosed by a team of individuals. So we encourage them to send them to school so that we can see what the social interaction is going to be like, because they're with us, they know us, but let's just say we take them into a different setting, it's going to be chaotic for that child because they're not familiar with the people around them, they're not familiar with the environment, even if it's in the open. So we encourage the parents to send them to school. So there's one way of like managing their whole behavior. We encourage school 100%. We encourage structure 100%. We even encourage group therapy right now. I mean, it's not good due to COVID, but we encourage social interaction with other children. So, and we have two children currently in our clinic that used to come and just cry all the time. Now they're actually working together. And this took 1 month for us to get that done. And so, what you guys are doing in Diamond is really good, Miss Amanda. You know, like you guys are looking at what these children want, you know, like their needs, and you guys are catering to them. So, yeah. Hmm.
We try, we try. By God's help, we try.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
And I
for
think
that, Michelle. I see that you're back with us. Do you have any thoughts you'd want to share when it comes to some of the myths you might have heard about autism that is important to challenge, or also just touching on some of the strategies that persons can use when it comes to helping children to manage autism?
Um, Autism is something that is real, that some people do not believe, that they think it's a myth indeed. Some people believe that because of some medical condition, the person might have born with autism, but as we all know, that is not so. Autism is as we know, it's a real disorder. It's a wide range. It's a wide range, and as Miss Thing said just now, we cannot diagnose it, but what we can do is help in bringing these children along, because it's real hard when you have a child with autism. Because in our group that I'm in, we have children with autism, but we try to get along with them. So we have a group one principal group, and what we does, we have a block making group. They would come and make blocks, and they love to do that. With all their autism, they can do things. So they come every day to make blocks, and they know that they have to come every day to make blocks, and that is something that they look forward to every day. So they can do a lot of things, not because they have a disability. They can do things.
Yeah, so I'm getting that the running team is definitely providing some amount of structure for them to be able to follow and look forward to, which I think is very, very important when it comes to managing children in general, I'd say, but particularly those who have disabilities such as autism. So, when it comes to the ways within which parents can support their autistic children, particularly as it relates to education, I'm curious about some of the thoughts you have surrounding this. I know it was mentioned earlier that a lot of times the stigma can really begin in the home, which is quite unfortunate. But aside from, like learning more about autism and accepting autistic children as they are, what are some of the things that parents can do to support education for their children?
um, should I go ahead or
Go
No, you
carry
go.
or yes. Well, over the years as a teacher, one thing I know for sure, when you align yourself with the parents and also with God, you can do so much more. When you have parents that are always there to really basically miss what else can I do at home, you form structure in such a way that could be able to incorporate both. It should not be challenging at home, at school for the child, right? So I know during the pandemic, a lot of children, because they were away from, they basically they break, um, the whole routine was broken. So they were used to getting up at a certain time, going off to school at a certain time. You find a lot of them had relapses or they fall into depression. And basically, the parents were in awe what's really going on with my child. The child used to basically they were independent, going to the washroom on their own, but now they just sit for hours and you have to basically help them through the routine, right? I know many parents went through that and they didn't know how to basically seek help, right? How to get into the routine again. But now it's much better now because school is reopening and you have to basically go through the structure back again with the child. I know they have talented people at Georgetown Hospital and now with other hospitals too that will be able to gradually help them through the process. But you just have to align yourself. Now at school we have an introductory part whereby the children will come along with a parent. We kind of reoriented them into the school system again. Well, this is your teacher, this is the classroom, right? And then you go through the paces gradually, right? Online classes were available. For some children, they cannot go through the whole online classes for a long period. So basically, you have videos that would incorporate using the child's, align the child in such a way that the abilities are met, right? Because not all of them might be have that whole skill to write or so on, but they know the importance of routine, right? Now, when they come into the school environment, now we will take through the paces with the parents' help, right? Structure is very important when it comes to dealing with children with autism. You cannot forget about that. So, parents that are out there, just remember it's important that you have structure with the children along with the class teacher.
Thanks so much for sharing that. Anyone else would like to share their thoughts?
I think Miss Amanda would have covered everything, right? The parents networking with other parents to get advice and support, um, especially those children, those parents who may have a child on the spectrum. So it's good to get some amount of advice from other parents who have children on the spectrum and see what worked for them and see if it's going to work for your child as well. As she said, you keep a structure with them and you also use whatever is the child's special interest. So let's say the child likes painting or the child likes drawing, you use that as a way to help the child complete a task, whatever the teacher would have given them. You use it to help them to complete that task. And every parent knows their child's ability and how far the child can be pushed, or so it also depends on the parents as well to put that extra effort in and sit with the child, because for a child on the spectrum it becomes very frustrating, very stressful, especially if they have a whole lot of stuff that they gotta do, and the parents too may become frustrated. But first the parents need to find their balance before they can help that child. So as Miss Amanda say, you give them structure and you use whatever is it that they like to help them complete the task and find a good support system that's going to help the parents as well.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. There was something that I was reading a few days ago, and it spoke about how autistic behaviors are usually viewed. A lot of times, when persons think autism, they tend to think of children having tantrums and so on. And it made the point that when those behaviors happen, the child is unhappy. And so, what we basically do is associate a lot of negative ideas on autism without necessarily addressing the cause. I wouldn't know if you have any thoughts on that particular way that autism might be viewed in a manner.
Well, to be honest, when it comes to tantrum throwing, every child throws tantrums, right? And some children throw tantrums when they cannot express themselves, when it's difficult for them to express themselves. So if they want something that is high up on a cupboard, they don't know how to go to the mom and say, Mommy, I want this. So instead, they would hit everything, throw themselves on the ground, bang their head, like do all the extreme stuff. Um, for a child who is on the spectrum, it could be something like Miss Amanda would have said earlier, that they may be unhappy or something triggered this behavior. It has to be something that triggered this behavior. Because a child on the spectrum does not throw a tantrum just like that. Something had to happen. It's either, like the breeze blow a little too hard. Like they're very hypersensitive to touch. And we gotta think about all these things. Like if like just a bell rang, or they heard the birds chirping, something had to trigger that behavior for them to actually throw a tantrum. It could be also you know like this child in my clinic, she doesn't like the fan, and whenever the fan is on, she would throw a tantrum. Even
Yes,
if the fan
that
is off, she would throw a tantrum. If she sees the fan, she throws a tantrum. So my way of dealing with her is for her not to see the fan in general, right? So
Wow.
when it comes to the tantrum throwing, there's a lot of things that can trigger it, and every child throws a tantrum, so we can actually put the two together.
yes,
Yeah, definitely agreed on that.
totally. Yes. If I might just
Sorry.
add,
Yes, go
um,
ahead.
so research shows, right, that parents that when they discover that a child may have a disability, they go through the same symptoms as if a death of a loved one. They often blame one another or each other or even themselves, and maybe as signs of depression might step in more so with the mother, because we're naturally caregivers, right? And we want to make sure that our children are always in a crisp of environment, everything is in order. And when that balance is thrown off, it triggers some bit of emotion on us. So just imagine that mother is creating an environment for her child to always be loved and cared for. And I know something is wrong with my child, and now I have to let go of that and put them in an environment whereby people don't really know them or appreciate them, such as the school, such as the hospital, such as a club, right? It's hard. So you find it's very hard for them to separate themselves from the child too. Now, I often say as a teacher, and I remind the parents every day, when you find it hard to separate yourself from the child, regardless if the child has a disability or not, your sole responsibility is to teach your child independence. And if you can't teach your child independence, you fail as a parent. It might sound strong, right? The Bible states is that we have to, it's appointed to every man that we should die. Children bury parents. Now, if something should happen to your child, or something should happen to you, who would have to take care of that child? Bring back to the
Mhm.
point whereby how is it that we can be able to teach this child a form of independence despite the fact that we have so much obstacles around, right? We step back into the whole classroom environment. Is it appropriate for the child? Do we, as parents, really support do we support the child 100% whereby we can be able to watch them grow? There's so many questions that you can be able to lay it out in front of you, but at the end of the day, we have a responsibility to teach the child independence despite the fact that there's so many obstacles ahead of them.
Thanks so much for those additional thoughts, Amanda. And I totally agree with you that it's very important to teach children independence, particularly given that autistic children require that necessary structure. It becomes a even more important task in that case. Meshali, given your role on the Disability Commission, I was curious about what some of the challenges you might have faced over the years when it comes to working in the special needs sector in particular, if you'd like to share.
Okay. Well, one of the things that you face with children with disability, very first, is stigma. 'Cause I have a daughter with a disability. She was born with a disability. I accepted that she is a child with a disability. So sometimes you go places with her and there is a staring down. Everybody would be looking, there is a staring down. They won't move for her to sit and those type of things, okay? Because they think that this disability that she has, as it was said before, it's something that you could catch. So you don't want her next to me. No, she won't sit here and that sort of thing. But it's a real challenge because that is one. And next thing too, if you got to take them out, you cannot use the public transportation. You have to get a car to take them because getting onto the bus is difficult for them. It's one of the big challenges for them. Some of them cannot lift their feet to get into the buses, and that's a challenge. If they're using a wheelchair, that is another challenge for them. So it's very challenging for these children. Some of them get to go to school, but it is challenging for the parents too. And being a child with a disability on the whole, or an adult, or a person with a disability, it's a big challenge.
Thanks so much for sharing that. So I was curious about if there were any points that we might not have covered tonight that you felt very important to highlight or some key messages surrounding autism that you believe the public should be aware of.
I think we need more public awareness when it comes to autism, especially because the public is not so aware of autism. As some people would say, they're mentally challenged, but they're not mentally challenged. They're just children with autism. I think we need more public awareness when it comes to autism. We either need like we need people to do training with persons, let them know well these children are autism, you know, how to deal with them. The clinics too. I think when parents go to the clinic, other than parents, clinic can do training with some parents. They might ask them to bring along a sibling, an uncle, an aunt, or a friend, and you try to do some training with them so that they can know more about autism.
I would like to add something. Um, I think what we didn't cover is that autism can be also misdiagnosed, right? Like I said earlier, it takes a team of specialists to diagnose a child on the spectrum, not just a speech therapist or a special need teacher. It needs a doctor, physician, pediatric doctor, neurologist, physical therapist, occupational therapist, speech therapist, a nurse, everybody who would have been in the care of this child from conception. Those are the persons who can come together and see, well, this child is on the spectrum. But we have some children who, or some persons who may have some amount of characteristics, and we can pose it as, they may be on the spectrum. But it may not be so, like a child who has a language or speech delay or hearing impairment. They would throw tantrums, they would have fine motor skills, fine motor skill difficulties, gross motor skill difficulties, just like an autistic person. But the difference between the two is that autism is a social communication and interaction problem. The children who may have a speech delay or language delay, they will throw tantrum because they don't understand what they're hearing or they don't know how to respond to you. Um, Also, children on the spectrum may have what is thing called narrow interests, like they only like looking at fans spinning and like the wheels on the bus, the spin wheels on a car, or they like plastics. But that could just be, like something that every child likes. No, like I've seen this that every child that I've came across prefers to play with a tablet instead of playing with a toy. That's because technology now is on the rise and we're giving children tablets to use instead of toys. They don't know to play with toys appropriately. So when they turn up in front of you, they can't have a conversation because the only thing they conversate with is the tablet or the phone or the TV. So then we can say, this child on the spectrum, this child don't know to communicate, this child have a social problem. No, 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 no. The child don't have any of the above. The child just need to be put out of that environment and put in a child environment where you could break like back in the days, mommy had all these ways you could throw down one, like the fun of these kind of things, not to injure themselves, but to be a child. These children are not getting the opportunity now to be children because we stick all the gadgets in the hand because mommy's busy. Mommy really can't sit and watch you draw or paint anything at the moment, right? Another thing is that they say that children on the spectrum, have high IQs, which is good. They read early, they have high intelligence, but they also have children who do the same thing, but they're hypolexic, meaning that they do all these things, but they're not on the spectrum. They don't have a social communication or interaction problem. So it's actually misdiagnosed. Also, for persons who may have like sensory processing problem, autistic persons are hypersensitive to touch, and I have people who are generally don't like to be touched, but they're not on the spectrum. They're not. Um, Another one is those who may have psychological disorder like OCD, you know. They are not autistic. they Those who may have like a social communication disorder, it may sound like autism, but it is not the same thing. Interact for autism is social interaction. Anything to do with them interacting with people, being in a social environment, that is autism. But it can be misdiagnosed a whole lot.
Yes.
Thanks so much. Would you like to add anything to that, Amanda, or any other thoughts you feel is important to highlight?
I think she just went into my brain and actually shared, tried to take out every bit of it, right? But one of the things I would like to elaborate on, given the fact that they have, what should I say, acute way when it comes to dealing with particular, they have their particular thing where they like to deal with it, if it's dinosaur or if it's basic computer, whatever. If we should be able to foster that now, we as professionals, we can be able to incorporate their obsession into a way that they could be able to gear into an environment whereby they could be able to be gainfully employed. Now, this child has an obsession with cars. Basically, they have the ability that with careful help that they could become, what should I say, an engineer or probably a mechanic. Now, if we understand that early on, we could be able to train them in such a way that they could be able to do that. But Maybe I have a vision for that now, right? I would like to see that happening sometime in the near future because Guyana, we Guyanese, we thrive anywhere, right? And Guyana could be one of the countries that could be able to foster such an, when it comes to autism, right? Our children can be on top, right? Because we have what it takes. Also, you mentioned about being big misdiagnosed. We could be able to change our way in which we not only deal with children on the spectrum, we can be able to go into schools and be able to do screenings early on. Also, the clinics as well. I believe in early intervention. Early intervention helps so much more when it comes to children and children academic performance. It's key from 0 to 5 to teach them some basic obedience, how to sit, how to stand. When you when you don't have that so early, it's hard for us as educators to actually put that building block up. Now, when you reach that age from 7 to 12, and you don't have from 0 to 5, you find that it will be very hard and somewhat impossible to have that strive as a teenager and even to adulthood. Early intervention is key when it comes to teaching children with autism. I'm sure we have a lot more to say, but I'm just going to do that for now.
Yes, definitely. You've all left us with quite a lot to think about, and I wholeheartedly agree with all your comments on the ways that you can really support children with autism, and also things that you really need to be mindful about when it comes to navigating their disabilities. So I really would like to thank you all for being here today. It was a very informative session, and I surely learned a lot. And I'm sure those who have viewed would have also learned a lot about autism. And it's really great that we're able to have these conversations and raise awareness and promote acceptance of children who have disabilities. So thanks once again for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having me.
You're welcome.